What if I told you that the biggest obstacle between you and success isn't a lack of intelligence, talent, or opportunity, but your inability to understand people? Imagine walking into a room where every conversation flows naturally. People listen when you speak. They trust you. They remember you. Doors open not because you demanded them to, but because others genuinely want to help you. Now imagine the opposite. Strained conversations, misunderstood intentions, tension in meetings, arguments at home, stalled careers. The difference between those two realities often comes down to one thing: how you handle human relationships. For nearly a century, one book has quietly shaped presidents, CEOs, salespeople, teachers, and everyday people seeking better lives. That book is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It isn't about manipulation. It isn't about charm tricks. It's about understanding one profound truth. People are driven less by logic and more by emotion, ego, pride, and the need to feel important. In this deep dive, we're going to unpack not just what Carnegie teaches, but why it works, how it applies today, and how you can use these timeless principles to transform your personal life, career, leadership style, and even your sense of identity. Let's begin at the beginning. Carnegie wrote this book during the Great Depression, a time when jobs were scarce and competition was brutal. Technical skill wasn't enough. People needed influence. They needed cooperation. They needed persuasion without hostility. Carnegie, who had been teaching public speaking and interpersonal skills for years, noticed a pattern. The most successful people weren't necessarily the smartest. They were the ones who understood human nature. The core thesis of the book is deceptively simple. If you want to influence people, start by genuinely understanding and valuing them. Every major principle in the book flows from this idea. Carnegie does not ask you to dominate others. He asks you to align with them. The book is structured in 4 major parts. First, fundamental techniques in handling people. Second, ways to make people like you. Third, methods to win people to your way of thinking. And fourth, how to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. What makes this book different from other self-help works is its foundation in observation. Carnegie collected real stories, business leaders, politicians, historical figures, and distilled common behavioral patterns. The result isn't theory alone. It's tested human psychology. Let's move into the first section: fundamental techniques in handling people. Carnegie begins with a principle that seems obvious, but is rarely practiced. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Why does he start here? Because criticism triggers defensiveness. When someone feels attacked, their ego activates. Instead of listening, they justify. Instead of reflecting, they retaliate internally. Carnegie illustrates this with criminals who rationalize their own behavior. Even those who commit severe wrongdoing see themselves as justified. The deeper psychological insight here is that people protect their self-image at all costs. When you attack someone's behavior directly, they interpret it as an attack on their identity. In modern terms, this aligns with cognitive dissonance theory. People resist information that threatens their self-concept. So if you want change, criticism is the least effective entry point. Instead of criticism, Carnegie advocates understanding. Ask, what motivates this person? What pressures are they under? What do they fear losing? In practical terms, this means that if your coworker misses deadlines, instead of saying, "You're unreliable," you might ask, "Is there something blocking you?" The tone changes the outcome. Next principle: give honest and sincere appreciation. Notice the words honest and sincere. Carnegie distinguishes appreciation from flattery. Flattery is self-serving. Appreciation is other-focused. Humans crave recognition. It is one of the deepest psychological drives. We want to feel significant. When you provide genuine appreciation, you tap into that drive. Carnegie shares stories of leaders who turned around struggling employees simply by recognizing their strengths. The transformation happens because appreciation reinforces identity. When someone feels seen, they rise to the expectation. In real life, think about how often people are taken for granted. The employee who quietly keeps things running. The spouse who handles countless invisible tasks. The friend who always listens. Appreciation is rare currency, and, because it is rare, it is powerful. The third principle in this section is to arouse in the other person an eager want. This is where influence becomes strategic. Carnegie argues that the only way to get someone to do something is to make them want to do it. You cannot force long-term cooperation. You can only inspire it. This shifts the mindset from how do I get what I want to how do I align my request with what they value. For example, instead of telling a child to study because grades matter to you, you might frame it around their dream career. Instead of telling an employee to work harder, connect the effort to growth opportunities. Influence, Carnegie teaches, is alignment. Now we move into the second part of the book, how to make people like you. The first principle here is simple. Become genuinely interested in other people. Not pretend. Not strategic curiosity. Genuine interest. People can detect insincerity. But when someone feels truly heard, walls drop. Conversations deepen. Trust builds. Carnegie references historical figures who made others feel uniquely important. Their secret wasn't charisma, it was attention. In our modern age of distraction, this principle is even more relevant. When someone gives you full attention, no phone, no interruption, it feels rare. And rarity creates value. The next principle is to smile. At first glance, this feels almost trivial, but a smile signals safety. It communicates warmth. Neuroscience tells us that facial expressions are contagious. When you smile, others' mirror neurons respond. A smile lowers defenses before a word is spoken. Then Carnegie emphasizes remembering and using people's names. He calls a person's name the sweetest sound in any language. Why? Because identity matters. A name affirms individuality. In business, politics, and personal relationships, those who remember names stand out. It signals care. It says, you matter enough for me to remember you. Another key principle, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Most people approach conversations waiting for their turn to speak. Carnegie flips this dynamic. He suggests listening not as a tactic, but as a gift. When someone talks about themselves, they experience pleasure centers in the brain activating. You are literally associating yourself with positive emotion by listening. The deeper lesson is humility. To truly listen, you must suspend your need to impress. Carnegie then advises talking in terms of the other person's interests. This connects back to alignment. If you want connection, enter their world. Learn what excites them. Speak their language. Finally, make the other person feel important. Do it sincerely. Notice how this theme keeps returning. Importance, recognition, significance. The human need for importance drives ambition, conflict, love, jealousy, achievement, and even crime. When you give someone importance in healthy ways, you reduce their need to seek it in unhealthy ones. Now we enter the third section, winning people to your way of thinking. Carnegie begins with a surprising rule. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Arguments rarely change minds, they harden positions. Even if you win, you lose goodwill. The deeper psychology here involves ego threat. When proven wrong publicly, people double down internally. Instead of arguing, Carnegie suggests showing respect for the other person's opinions and never saying, you're wrong. This is not about surrendering truth. It's about preserving dignity. He recommends admitting when you are wrong quickly and emphatically. This disarms conflict. When you take ownership, you remove the other person's need to attack. Another principle, begin in a friendly way. Hostility escalates, warmth diffuses. Carnegie also teaches getting the other person saying yes immediately. Start with common ground. Agreement builds momentum. Then, he introduces a powerful concept. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. This applies even in persuasion. When someone articulates reasons themselves, they believe them more deeply. He also suggests letting the other person feel the idea as theirs. This is not deception, it is collaborative thinking. When people participate in forming an idea, they are more committed to it. Carnegie encourages seeing things from the other person's point of view. This is empathy operationalized. Before persuading, understand their perspective fully. He even suggests appealing to nobler motives. Most people want to see themselves as fair, generous, ethical. Frame your appeal in a way that aligns with their self-image. He also introduces dramatization, making ideas vivid and concrete rather than abstract. And finally, he suggests throwing down a challenge. People respond to healthy competition and the opportunity to prove themselves. Now, we reach the final section, how to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. Carnegie begins with praise before criticism. This softens the blow and affirms identity before addressing behavior. Then he suggests calling attention to mistakes indirectly. Instead of blunt correction, guide awareness. He emphasizes talking about your own mistakes before criticizing others. This equalizes status and builds humility. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Questions create ownership. Let the other person save face. Public embarrassment damages relationships deeply. Praise the slightest improvement. Reinforce progress. Give the person a fine reputation to live up to. When you tell someone they are dependable, they strive to embody that trait. Make the faults seem easy to correct. This reduces overwhelm. And make the other person happy about doing what you suggest. Throughout this entire framework, one theme emerges again and again: respect human dignity. Carnegie's philosophy rests on a foundational belief that influence is ethical when it uplifts others. This is not about manipulation. It is about cooperation rooted in empathy. Psychologically, the book aligns with modern behavioral science. It anticipates principles like positive reinforcement, cognitive dissonance, ego preservation, and intrinsic motivation. Philosophically, it challenges the ego. It asks you to step outside your need to be right, recognized, or dominant. In a world that rewards assertiveness and self-promotion, Carnegie suggests that humility and attentiveness are greater strengths. Now, let's consider real-world applications. In leadership, these principles create loyal teams. Employees don't quit companies, they quit managers who fail to recognize them. In marriage, avoiding criticism and offering appreciation can prevent years of resentment. In networking, genuine interest builds lasting alliances. In conflict resolution, allowing others to save face can preserve relationships that might otherwise collapse. However, there are limitations. If used insincerely, these principles backfire. People sense manipulation quickly. Additionally, in environments that demand immediate authorities, such as crisis situations, collaborative persuasion may not always be feasible. And some critics argue that constantly prioritizing others' feelings can suppress necessary confrontation. Carnegie's principles require balance. But when practiced authentically, they create extraordinary influence without coercion. As we close, let's return to the central insight. People are not primarily logical creatures. They are emotional beings seeking dignity, respect, and importance. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop trying to overpower. You start trying to understand. You stop winning arguments. You start winning allies. You stop demanding recognition. You start giving it. And paradoxically, by focusing on elevating others, you elevate yourself. Nearly a century after its publication, How to Win Friends and Influence People remains relevant because human nature has not changed. Technology evolves, communication platforms shift, but the desire to feel valued remains constant. So here's the reflection I want to leave you with. In your next conversation, instead of asking, "How can I impress this person?" ask, "How can I make this person feel important?" Because when people feel important in your presence, they will remember you. They will trust you. They will follow you. And that is the quiet, enduring power of influence. If this perspective resonates with you, don't just admire it, practice it. Influence is not built in a single conversation. It is built in daily habits of empathy, appreciation, and respect. Master that, and you don't just win friends. You transform relationships and with them, your entire life.